Hi! Okay, so I was gonna have my board and we were gonna have cute little things that I was gonna write down, but my hand hurts and I can't hold a pen and I really wanted to do this today. So, I have a laptop. It's not the same. You can't see it, but it's fine. Today we are talking about the greatest existential crisis I've ever had, Fleabag. Now, if you're looking for an emotionally devastating but very bingeable show, this is it. This is the one. There's only 6 episodes a season. There's only 2 seasons. And, it's the most in your feelings you're ever gonna get. So, one of my favorite things about this show is that not everybody has a name. Fleabag is our main character, and that is all we know her as. Fleabag. Her sister Claire, and Martin, and boyfriend Harry, and we have names, but Dad is just Dad. Their godmother isn't really referred to as anything. I have my theories on this, and we'll get into them, but the non-fiction answer is Phoebe Waller-Bridge said she hates coming up with names, and so that's just how that is. And Flea was her actual real-life nickname with her family growing up. So that turns into Fleabag, which very much reflects her character and how her character feels about themselves in the show. So, I actually want to start with episode 2 of season 1, the opening, when she's on the subway, or the train, or the bus, or whatever you want to call it. And,
I think my period's coming.
basically what's happening is that everyone is giving a glimpse of what their internal struggle is, even though they're all just like sitting on the bus. And it's weirding her out, which I think is funny because every time she breaks the fourth wall, that's us seeing her internal issues. And it's just it's a very heady thing where she's glimpsing around, realizing that everybody is having their own individual problems. Anyway, it's cute. We're gonna start with the family stuff because there's a lot of it. Her and Claire. She says to us that Claire got all of their mom's good bits twice within the first 3 episodes. She also goes to the cemetery every day. So as someone who lost their mom really young, that tells me that obviously she misses her mom, but she is also very insecure because she feels like her sister got more of her mom than she did. And as someone who has been told repeatedly by one specific person in my life that my brother is so much like my mom, and she sees so much of my mom in my brother, and nothing of my mom in me, that's a heartbreaking thought to have. When someone you're close to, who's especially a parent, dies, you want to know that you have a part of them with you. Whether it's your mannerisms, or the way you laugh, or the way you would respond to things, it literally doesn't matter. You want to know that you have a part of that person. Now, I know I'm very like my mom. I hear it from my dad, I hear it from my aunts, I hear it from her high school best friends all the time, who are accidentally calling me my mom's name for a good 2 years after she died. I know I'm like my mom. But to hear it from one person, just repeatedly, that I'm not, and my brother is, that shit hurts. So, I feel very connected to this show because it is very, very at me. In so many ways. But the fact that she felt the need to say she's got all mom's good bits twice, I get it. Anyway, whew, that was a lot for me. Then we've got Fleabag and her dad. Now, okay, we're gonna have a talk. Are you ready for a talk? I see on the internets all the time that there is no wrong way to grieve. And this is factually untrue. There are lots of wrong ways to grieve. You don't get to go around doing whatever the fuck you want because you're sad. That's not how it works. The second anything you do affects other people, it's no longer something you get to do. There are lots of wrong ways to grieve. Moving on in under a year after your spouse dies is a wrong way to grieve. Moving on with literally anyone that knew your spouse in any way after your spouse dies is the wrong way to grieve. Okay? So just know that if you move on after your spouse dies in under a year, I hate your guts and your trash. If you move on with someone your spouse was close to, you're worse than trash, you'll burn in hell. Okay? Great. Glad we had this talk. There are, in fact, incorrect ways to grieve. My husband has time limits he has been given. And I told him if he moves on with anybody that I've literally ever met in my life, I'm haunting his penis. So, just to be clear, there are wrong ways to grieve. Because Godmom is a whole ass crazy bitch. I've watched this show in its entirety almost 3 times now, and I am filled with such a visceral, guttural, primal anger every time she's on screen. I fucking cannot. But when specifically, because I have specifics, specifically when they go to their dad's to as like a memorial lunch for their mom. They're all gonna sit around and remember their mom. We used to do that for my mom with her high school best friends and us, and it's a thing that people do. When they bring flowers for their dad because they were their mom's favorite, and she goes, "Oh, let's just leave these out here," and lays them on the porch. Excuse me. And then she was like genuinely upset and bitter when they were reminiscing. I can't. I cannot. I hate it. She shouldn't have even been there. First of all, there was one Mother's Day. We used to do brunch, and then we'd go visit my mom in the cemetery. There was one Mother's Day where some people decided to invite themselves. It was my new step family that I was not having it with. Unacceptable, inappropriate. You have no place being there. I made them wait in the car. There's no circumstance where it is acceptable that new almost stepmommy is there while we're remembering the death of our actual mother. Nope. Absolutely not. When Fleabag shoved her, it was like one of the greatest moments in life. And then when she gets slapped and Dad sits there and does nothing. Dad constantly putting his happiness over his child's well-being also hits real close to home. And it's gross, and I hate it. There's no other perspective to watch this from. There's just not. Dad and Godmom suck. And they don't suck any less the more times you watch this show. I want to get into some of these fourth wall breaks and these flashbacks because Fleabag's guilt over Boo's death is a very obvious, like, through line, and it actually drives a lot of her actions throughout the show. The setup, the setup to the nice big reveal at the end. I mean, most of us figured it out a couple episodes before they said it, but it's a gut punch. So we keep flashing back to Boo, this friend that we know she died at the very beginning. We find that out in the first episode, I think. And season one, the color grading in season one is very flat. It's very dulled out because every time she flashes back to Boo, it's bright, it's colorful, it's like how you would experience it in reality. And to me, that says that, one, Boo was the best part of their friendship and of her life. Like, they were business partners, they were best friends, Boo was the color in her life. Two, what the change in color grading does is, obviously it's an emotional state change. When Boo was here, she felt happy, she had a purpose, there was a reason for her to be alive, and now everything just feels kind of gray. Oh my god, and then she still calls Boo's phone, like she just wants to hear her voice in the, like, voicemail message, and I think that's something they use in TV and film a lot when someone is grieving, and I love it because I know if I could hear my mom's voice again, I would never get out of bed. I would just be calling her voicemail all the time. But then we have, like, the very end of the season. With the very end of the season where traffic is rushing by and Fleabag is standing on the sidewalk and it starts flashing back between her and Boo. And this is a very obvious, like, she's contemplating suicide in the way that Boo died. She is clearly thinking about stepping out into traffic. And then her monologue in the last episode is so devastating. This whole season, she's sleeping with Harry, she is going on, she's sleeping with this random up-the-ass dude, she's dating bus rodent guy, like, she very clearly feels like all she has to offer the world is sex, and she truly doesn't believe, like, that she is worth anything else, and here's where Phoebe Waller-Bridge becomes the most brilliant writer of all time. This whole season builds to Godmom's sexhibition, where it's a celebration of sex and femininity and blah blah blah, but that is not the relationship that Fleabag has with sex or with relationships, and it's just so good. And then we have a moment that fills me with so much rage. They get to the sexhibition with her date, whatever. Godmom hands her a tray of drinks because she doesn't have staff. Tells her to circulate with the drinks. And you can tell kind of how, I guess, dejected she is because she does it. And I wouldn't have. I would have tossed the drink tray and walked my ass right out. I'm also a problem. But when she drinks and she starts, like, going throughout the night and she just starts dumping drinks, and then Dad comes up, I deserve to be happy. I'm happy. I deserve to move on. First of all, we're going back to the there's no wrong way to grieve thing. No. No. You don't. Just be clear. If you lose your spouse, you don't deserve anything. Your spouse deserves respect, still, even though they're dead. They deserve to have their relationship respected. And when you start to move on at their funeral with their student, you deserve Nothing. You're a trash human. You're some weak ass shit if you can't be alone longer than 30 fucking seconds after your spouse dies. I get it. It's sad. It's lonely. Suck it the fuck up. You need to be alone for a while after your spouse dies. I firmly believe that. That's why Patrick has a time limit. If Patrick ever died, first of all, I would never get remarried. There is no future. There's no world where I lose my best friend and I jump into bed with anybody, potentially ever again. If I try to imagine a future without Patrick, it's just black. It's gone. It's nothingness. So I genuinely can't wrap my brain around people that lose their spouses and then are just like, oh well, on to the next one, because fuck you. Fuck you, you never really loved your spouse. It's gross. Dad sucks. I know I already said that, but I need to reiterate it because he's garbage. And then of course we have Claire and Fleabag, which is probably my favorite relationship on the show, obviously. Because their sisterly bond goes so back and forth. They're very, very different people. And in this first episode, they get sent to this feminist lecture that they go to together, and they have a weird moment where Claire tries to hug her and Fleabag accidentally smacks her. Like, they're not an affectionate family. It's very clear that the whole family is very emotionally unavailable, which is fine, except for dad, sister, godmom constantly try to make Fleabag feel like she's the problem. And we see this, I'll bring this back up when we talk about season 2, but I think that's what bothers me, is they all very clearly have issues, but somehow she's the only problem. The running gag throughout the whole show, actually, now that I realize it, because it pops back up in season 2 quite a lot, is this little gold sculpture that Godmom did of a naked woman, and Fleabag steals it in the first episode, and then she tries to sell it, and then Martin gives it to Claire, and then Claire gets Fleabag to try and put it back, and then after that little lunch with their mom, or for their mom, Claire steals it back for Fleabag, and I think that was a really incredible sister moment. And then they go on this like silent retreat or whatever, which was weird, but it's fine. And Fleabag crawls into bed with Claire, who's very like, don't touch me. And they cuddle and they fall asleep, and I think that was really, really sweet. And then, the next day Claire abandons her at the thing, but they have little glimpses of being sisters, of actually caring about each other, and I think that's really nice. Until we're at the sexhibition, and Claire basically yells at Fleabag, how can I believe you after what you did to Boo? And then it's like officially revealed that the reason Boo died, we knew Boo died because her boyfriend slept with somebody else, but the somebody else was Fleabag. And so this whole season, these flashbacks, the constantly sleeping with random guys, the blah blah blah, all of that was Fleabag trying to process a world without her best friend and just an immense amount of guilt. And I think, God, I have such a hard time articulating my feelings for the show because you feel all of the things when watching this show. And normally I'm more articulate about the things that I like and things that I don't, my analysis and all of that, but there's something that's just so visceral about watching this show that I am trying my best to articulate, but you really just have to watch it and feel it, because it is one of the most in-touch shows that exists, I think. I put this, BoJack Horseman and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend all in the same. They're 3 wildly different shows. Same vibe, though. Same energy, same emotional impact. The other 2 are just longer. I think this one's very succinct with what it wanted to say, and it was able to do that so quickly. Phoebe did an incredible job of these self-contained single-season arcs that gave us such a complete picture of who Fleabag was and her growth through the first and second season. And it's just a really well written show. Okay, I have to move on to season 2, but I feel a lot of feelings when watching this show, and I know I'm a writer, so I should be better with articulating it with my words, but it's just such an in-your-body reaction kind of show. Like, every time something happens, every time something's revealed, every time Fleabag does something, you don't just feel it in your heart, you feel it in your guts. Like, I have full body reactions to this show every time I see it, and I don't think that's something that can be properly articulated. So let's move on to season 2. So season 2 picks up a little over a year after the end of season 1. And Fleabag genuinely seems like she's doing okay. She's at this family dinner, she's quiet, she's stoic, she's listening, she's pretending to be happy that her father and her godmom are now engaged. She's doing all right. Until her family decides to poke and prod, because we talked about how, you know, family's emotionally unavailable, but Fleabag's the problem, obviously. So Fleabag is desperately trying to get through this family dinner. She's doing a good job. Dad asks her what's wrong and why she's so quiet. I think Godmom says something. Claire says something. Martin says something. Everybody is literally, you're just poking the bear. You're asking for her to go off. And then when she finally does, then they're like, oh yeah, typical fucking Fleabag. And you're like, okay, but she was doing fine. What the fuck? You're the issue. So Claire has a miscarriage in the bathroom, and Fleabag once again tries to have a moment with her sister, but Claire doesn't want to confront what just happened with her miscarriage, so she acts like nothing's wrong, and then once again makes everything Fleabag's problem, because she takes that on, said, I just had a miscarriage, don't we all think I should go to the hospital? And Claire is still, you know, avoidant or whatever, and then Martin starts being Martin, and in one of the most cathartic moments in television, Fleabag punches him in the face, like he deserves. Now at the end of the night, Claire and Fleabag do end up going off and bonding over how hot the priest is. We'll get to hot priest in a second. But we also found out at dinner that the birthday present that Dad hands her is a therapy session. Crazy work. Absolutely batshit crazy. An unasked for present. So, you know, therapy's expensive. If someone went to me and would be like, yo, can you pay for a therapy session? I need to go. I can't afford it. Sure, that's fine. But you haven't seen me in a year. And the first thing you're gonna give me is a counseling session? I'm sorry? Nope. Crazy. Hate it. Let's talk about the hot priest, who, by the way, is only ever referred to as the hot priest. I think in the script he's just the priest. But it's interesting for her character because in season 1, we only see her having emotionally detached sex. And then the first person she connects with in this season is someone she can't have sex with and who is very, very unavailable. He's a Catholic priest. He can't even be married. There's nothing. So in the first season, she used sex to feel like she is worth something. And then in this season, she is emotionally connecting to someone who is about as unavailable and unattainable as it gets. Which feels right. So she goes to this therapy session. And it's made very clear during this therapy session that Fleabag has never been in love. She actually finds the idea of being in love with the priest comical because she's never felt that before. The other thing that comes out in this therapy session that's going to be really, really important later is the therapist asks her, no friends, no one to talk to, and she goes, oh, I have people to talk to. They're there. They're always there. That's us. That's the audience. That's why she breaks the fourth wall. We are who is always there for her to talk to. Now, her and this priest start hanging out because she went to church. Girl was down bad if she went to church. Catholic masses are long and boring as hell. And he marked Bible verses for her. Now, not religious, don't care for the Bible, but if someone who is as devout as a priest, someone whose whole life is religion and the Bible and talking about the Bible, and this is something that is sacred to them, this is something that is so deeply intrinsic to who they are, and they want to share with you pieces of who they are that they think will help you. That's some romantic ass shit right there. Whether you want to read the Bible or not, whether you like religion or not, doesn't matter. That is some deep, heartfelt, thoughtful shit. And that's when she starts falling, like, actually in love with him. That's when we all started falling in love with him. Andrew Scott, fantastic choice for the hot priest because, yes. Along this journey with the priest, she meets up with him pretty often, and they kind of agree to just be friends because he can't, despite how much she likes him and wants him to. And like she does, after they agree to be friends, she turns and talks to us, the audience, and he notices. And when she looks into the camera, he sees her look into the camera. Now, I cannot possibly describe how much I love this framing device, because for a season and a half now, Fleabag has been using fourth wall breaks to communicate, to connect, because she does it around her family, in the therapist's office, around the men she dates and sleeps with all the time, and nobody notices because nobody is that emotionally connected to her. No one in her life sees her the way that we do, except for him. He sees her talk to us because he sees her. And it's so good. So he's giving her these new experiences. They go to a Quaker meeting, and she's being very open with trying new things with him, and he's getting her to open up emotionally, and it's so visual. Like, he throws her off so much. There was a point where she was going back and forth between talking to us and talking to him and talking to us and talking to him, to the point where it flips. She accidentally says what she meant to say to us to him, and vice versa. And I think that was a really incredible moment, because he really had her on her heels. She had her life figured out. It wasn't necessarily great, but she was going through life doing what she was doing, and she was fine with that. And then she connected to a priest, and it throws her whole worldview off. And then when they're back at the cafe and going back and forth, you see her start to shut down emotionally, because she's connecting with someone who can't ever give her a relationship, can't ever give her sex, can't ever give her the kind of relationship she's used to having. And you see her being avoidant, but she doesn't actually shut down until he calls her out on breaking the fourth wall. And then he looks directly into the camera. The first time I saw that, they were going back and forth, back and forth. He's like, "What is that? What are you doing?" He looks right into the camera, and I was like, "Oh, no, don't look over here." Like, it was such a good writing and directing moment, because he was really breaking through. We are her walls. We are her protection. So with him looking straight into the camera, with him seeing us and seeing her see us, he was getting too close. And so she shut down. And at the end of the last season, Fleabag really had to kind of confront what she did to Boo and what the consequences of those actions were. And this season, she's processing how she's been going through her life and doing that with a priest who, by every account and measure, knows how he's supposed to go through life. He knows what he's supposed to do every day. He knows what his purpose is incredible writing, because this doesn't end up with her finding religion. It doesn't end up with him leaving his. It simply is two people falling in love and getting from each other what they need. He, unfortunately, falling in love with someone solidified his faith. He said he has doubts all the time, and being able to fall in love with someone and have sex with that person really solidified that being a priest was what he's supposed to do. And having a relationship with him and falling in love with someone unattainable proves that she was more. She is worth more than just sex, and she is capable of genuine human connection. Now, Fleabag has... God, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is so good at writing, like, super intense emotional monologues. They're in the confessional, and she said, just tell me what to fucking do. And he says, kneel. And I feel like I should leave the room. Because then he says kneel again, and I was like, okay, what kind of show is this? What are we watching? Because the chemistry that Andrew Scott and Phoebe Waller-Bridge have in this show is unmatched. It is the most intense chemistry I have ever seen two people have on screen. When he finally resolves himself to the fact that they're going to have sex and they start making out, I feel like I should leave. Like, I don't feel like it's so personal, and I don't feel like I should be here for it, which is supported by the writing, because we've watched Fleabag have sex, I don't know, a dozen times now, but when she's in bed with the priest, she sends us away, because it is personal. It's the most personal sex she's ever had. It's the most personal anything has ever been for her. And he sees her, so we don't need to. It's just phenomenal fucking writing. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is my hero, and they should give her all of the money to do whatever she wants all of the time. We're gonna get to the ending real quick, because in a minute, because it's deeply devastating. But I want to go back to Claire and Martin, because Claire gets a lot more to do this season, in the sense that she gets her promotion, and she falls for one of her co-workers, and she says she's going to leave Martin. For realsies this time. Or at least she talks about it. Hell, even Martin's stepson says, tell her to leave him. You know you suck when your own child is like, get her out of here. This guy's garbage. I love that for him. But Claire's throwing this award ceremony party thing or whatever for people at work. And Fleabag gets to do the canapes and everything for it, and I swear this damn statue comes back into play. Fleabag, of course, breaks the trophy that was supposed to be given out. So she goes and runs and gets this fucking statue from season 1 and brings it back, and that's the award. And she gets it back from the person that they give it to, because stepmommy can't know that her work was stolen or whatever. The wedding is so cathartic in so many ways, and also so disappointing in so many ways. So we finally get to the wedding. This whole season has been building up to the wedding. This just occurred to me. I find it interesting that the, like, pinnacle moments of both seasons had to do with dad and stepmom. Like, their events were the driving force and what everything was leading to. I found that weird. Anyway, Fleabag gives stepmom back the fucking statue. And then she steals it again at the end, which I think is amazing. But Claire finally decides to leave Martin. Finally. They find out at the wedding that it was not Fleabag's miscarriage at the very first episode. It was Claire's miscarriage. And she throws Martin's words back in his big, fat, dumbass face. I guess it was just the baby's way of saying, he didn't want you as a father. Fantastic. This also comes on the heels of Godmom pulling Fleabag aside and saying, no more miscarriages, dear. Like, stop making everything about you, even though we've established that that's not what fucking happened in the first episode. And in doing so, it's a good sister moment, because not only does Claire, like, get strength from finally telling Martin off, but it absolves Fleabag of being the problem from the very beginning of the season, and I think that's really important. And so she does leave Martin, and that was really cathartic. The disappointing part is that Dad actually marries Godmom. I just can't. I can't. I'm sorry. It's actually terrible. It's actually the fucking worst. It's inexcusable. And I hate them both with just a guttural passion. Anyway. The priest gives his little speech. One of my favorite lines of the series is, when you find somebody that you love, it feels like hope. Because he says it right to her. And it's just... And then we have a scene at the bus stop where she tells the priest that she loves him. And he says, it'll pass. And then I want to curl up into a ball and sleep for 5 to 7 business days. He does say, I love you too, as he walks off, which somehow makes it worse. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'd feel better if we just left it at it'll pass. The fact that he does love her too just makes me want to leap off a building a little bit. And then she walks off and she leaves us behind. The camera tries to follow her. She shakes her head and she leaves. And for the first time, we watch her walk away from the camera and leave the audience where they are. Now, my husband had a really good point here, that a popular fan theory is that leaving the camera behind is her leaving behind her guilt over Boo. Now, this is supported in that all of her flashbacks to Boo this season are not a different coloring. It's no longer flat and gray versus bright and colorful. This season is bright and colorful and vibrant and rich from the start. And when she flashes back to Boo, it's the same. Which tells me, as an audience member, that she's healing. And then having someone see her in the way only the audience sees her, also healing. So for her to leave the audience behind, leaving her guilt behind, ugh, it's just so good. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I would like you to write everything all the time, forever, until the end of my existence. Fleabag is beautiful. Fleabag is devastating. Fleabag will have you staring at the ceiling and just thinking about your life for the next 3 days. Fleabag is one of the best things television has ever done. Highly recommend everybody watch it all the time. because it hurts so good. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
I love you.
It'll pass.